All right, it's another Wage Rage. I'm Anthony Piatt. That's Miguel Iterati. Hey, this week we're going to recap a couple of things. The Bet US locks that we've been doing, we will not have one this week. It's a very light schedule, but we got back on that horse as we said last week. We're now 7-1 on the 8 or 9 groupings, 57-1 on the locks. But again, we only bring them to you when we're really, really sure. And there's no boxing on FanDuel as of this Thursday taping for this week. And there were not enough on BetUS when I ruled out the underdogs that I was thinking could win and a couple other factors. There's just not enough picks on there to make a nice 8-leg pick. We'll skip it this week because we're only going to bring you the hot ones. But we did want to hop on and mention Claressa Shields is fighting, was supposed to fight Hannah Gabriels. If you've been following the show closely, you'll know that Miguel has some history with Hannah Gabriels that we'll talk about briefly. The replacement fighter, though, fairly short notice, Maricela Cornejo. And you also know a little bit about her and had a pretty good record, lost to Franchon Cruz a couple of times. But folks, there's a great picture Miguel has just showed me, by the way, that I hope we can get on the screen right now. Cool picture from back in the day, Miguel. But let's dig into that base of knowledge that you have and tell us some of the, not only just your predictions on this fight, but share with us your connection to both Hannah Gabriels that had to pull out and the rest of this fight. There's some interesting connections from your time in Costa Rica, both in the corner and as a judge. Let's get to that, please. Enlighten us.
Cool. Thank you very much for the intro. I know Claressa Shields' original opponent, Hannah Gabriels, very well. We were members of the same gym for years here. I watched her coming up and training and boxing. She dropped Claressa Shields in their first fight in the opening round and then lost a 12-round decision. And that was the reason for the rematch. Hannah has pulled out of this fight. I'm not sure locally why that may have been, but she's towards the end of her career, so she wasn't 100% already. Also, in Costa Rica, she's not. Back in the day, she was dating and is married to Brian Vasquez, Tito Vasquez, who fought on a Mayweather undercard against Pacquiao, etc., etc. So here's a situation where, with him out of the game, Hannah's there's not as much focus on boxing in this country anymore. But Cornejo is a late replacement, but she's a decent opponent. She's 16-5 record. One of her early losses is to Kaylee Reese. I know Kaylee. She fought Hannah here in Costa Rica. And Kaylee's no joke, so it's not like you can look at her like, oh, she lost in her 5th fight to somebody who's a joke. This is not the case. Kaylee's a world-class athlete. Part of
and that was excuse me. That was the judges had that 95, 96, 91, 99, and then 96, 94. So I repeat, one judge had that 99, 91 in favor.
Not badly of boxing promotions too, but it rained during the fight, and half the ring was inaccessible with a puddle. Like they had to stay, like the fight. It didn't become an issue because they didn't go over there, but the fighters were limited to a portion of the ring for a while and stuff. Yeah, it's an unusual fight. And like I said,
wow,
Kaylee is not a joke. And that's part of. Cornejo at some point had her run and her attempt in the level. Here she's taking a fight against the top girl on late notice, so I think she's kind of fallen into the area where she's going to grab a payday. And sure, if she gets lucky and breaks through against Claressa, her career will hopefully get a bump as well. But that's a tall order. Claressa, what can you say? 2-time Olympian. This is her sport. She hasn't done the perfect job in presenting herself to the American public. She should be a bigger star, a la Katie Taylor in England, and that sort of stuff. And she hasn't been. Part of that's because her corner, knocked out a corner man of an opponent one time. a little thuggish behavior like that gets you a black eye. But the real black eye for her was her dabbling in MMA, where she went and was expected to be a boxer versus wrestler match against Kayla Harrison in the PFL, and Claressa didn't hold up her end of the bargain and didn't get to the final. She took a loss in MMA. I think that makes her especially dangerous in this match. Whoever would have come in there to face her, whether it be Hannah at the top of her game or a late replacement who's credible, I think that person's going to be in trouble, because Claressa coming back to this sport, she does have some cleaning up both of her image and now also a loss, a black eye on her record. Even though it's an MMA, they scrutinize the women at that level at this point. She needs a win, and you should be facing a very hungry Claressa Shields here. What are the odds?
I don't have the odds on that one. I didn't look it up I looked it up on the several apps and bookies that I use, and I did not find odds on this one. I'm sure we can find that. I believe Claressa, did not she suffer that loss in MMA and then come back and beat Savannah Marshall? But also I think what you're saying holds true, because the details are irrelevant of that, because in the broader public, it's just, she had a loss at some point. And this is what I tell.
So she lost in MMA. You've got that caveat. Now she's returning to her sport, 2-time Olympian, stuff like that. She's got to hold ground here. She loses here, it's like, well, she lost there too. And that really becomes the kind of thing that it becomes hard for a woman to get her name back up to, the superstar level again after a couple of black eyes. We haven't really seen it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think she needs to hold ground in boxing and say that, I went to MMA. I'll go back there at some point and do it right. But this is my world, and I think she'll
do well. I don't see the knockout necessarily. I mean, the problem being at 13-0, she's only got the 2 knockouts. And Cornejo, even with 5 losses, has never been knocked out. So
sturdy also, from what I remember. And the bottom line there is Claressa, I think she's got more power than 2 knockouts would indicate over a 13-fight career. And the bottom line is that she jumped to fight the best women in the world relatively quickly in the early part of her career. And at that point, you find yourself
not going to get as many.
Yeah, you're not going to get as many. So,
do you think she's at a point in her career, because I maybe do, where she's starting to put on a little bit more muscle, though? You know what I mean? Becoming a little bit, older, that more adult muscle setting in. Maybe Claressa is getting there. Maybe we'll see a couple more knockouts before it's over out of her. It's hard. It'll be interesting. I know the biology of men. We talk about different boxers and when they peak. We don't really mature physically until 26. Mentally, I think it's about 87. But physically, we don't mature until about 26 years of age and really put on that man muscle. I do think it's slightly different for women, and I apologize that I don't know what that age is. But I mean to say, she could be choosing to put on muscle, both because she's training harder and because her physiology at 28 years of age. That may be something where we see a little more power out of her. It'll be interesting to see, because as you say, to make a statement, and I've said this before too, some of the way she talks on Twitter, she's very
confident,
outspoken, controversial, if you will. And I try and explain to people, having been a music publicist for a lot of years and lucky enough to win Grammys through and with clients, of course, the pinnacle in the music business is sort of the cover of the Rolling Stone. That's a sort of a catch-all thing that you can, say, if we get you there, great, we've done all we can do, type of thing. And with athletes, it's always been that Wheaties box. That's the iconic thing for an athlete. And I try and explain to people, and unfortunately I understand we live in a racist society, and when there's a cultural thing going on and someone acts a certain way or wears gold teeth like Devin Haney did, and it's kind of different for some people, folks say, well, that's just it's racial bias, or you don't realize it, or you're flat out racist or whatever. And what I try and explain is, it's really not about me. I'm just saying, if I was your publicist and I'm trying to get you on that Wheaties box, I can tell you, these guys and women in the advertising world, looking at the whole society that they want to sell Wheaties to, they don't want that controversy. They don't want the negativity.
Everything you said is spot on, from the, questions about whether her power will manifest itself and stuff like that. At 28, you're right. I'm not familiar enough with women's physiology to compare to men and stuff like that. But at 28, we can certainly say she's entering her physical prime. And I don't think power, even though she has a low knockout rate, I don't think power was precisely her problem. She's a big girl in terms of, as an athlete, at 160, the UFC doesn't even have those weight classes because she's on the bigger end of what are women athletes in combat sports. So the power, something that it's probably been there. How does she decide to use it? I think a knockout would definitely be the statement she needs here. And then we made reference to, look, she's a 2-time gold medal Olympian. She was closer to the Wheaties box than most men.
Damn right.
And
her amateur record, by the way, at 64-1, Miguel, with 11 knockouts in the amateurs. That's a little surprising to see 11 knockouts even with 64, with the headgear and the bigger helmet. So 11 knockouts in the amateurs, out of 64, tells me she could do it. But as you said, like Lomachenko, she fought great. She fought good competition as soon as she went pro. She fought. Oh, actually, her first fight was Franchon Cruz. That was the first, her debut. It was Franchon's debut as well. And then from there, a 15-8 girl, Sydney LeBlanc at 4-1, 16-0 Nikki Adler as Clarissa's fourth fight. 17-0 Tori Nelson next. So she deserves a lot of respect, and she's an amazing fighter. And that knockout ratio may be a little deceiving because, as we mentioned just last week, week before, Devin Haney had a 75% knockout ratio when he was fighting in the Dogs billiard room in Tijuana. And then it's only 50% now. So she didn't have that luxury. Lomachenko didn't have that luxury. Guys and girls that have done the Olympics and come in already hot and known and get fast tracked can have a very deceiving record as far as knockout ratio, even as far as losses with some of them. Clarissa's still at 13-0. I think she handles this fight. I guess the question, we know she's a big favorite. I don't have the numbers, but do you dare take her by knockout? Because that probably is plus money. Is she ready to make a statement here?
Yeah, that would be something, you want to pay attention to the weigh-ins. You want to see what Cornejo comes, as a late replacement, what she comes in looking like. She could be on weight, but, physically not, haven't gone through a full training camp and things like that. If that shows itself in the weigh-ins, I think you're going to be in trouble because conditioning and that type of thing has never really been Clarissa's problem. I think Claressa has shot herself in the foot a couple of times through some of her social media presence where, she can be combative at times and things like that. And, racism certainly plays a part in today's society in some way, shape, or form. I'm not the person who's going to qualify that. But, racist or not, she doesn't do herself any favors when, her cornermen are knocking out opponents' cornermen. And the guy they knocked out was in his 60s, I understand. So it's not like it was like, there was some angst among the young guys and they got into it. They knocked out, and trust me, I'm getting to be about 60, so I can see an older, ornery man getting under someone's skin, and you got to deal with it. I'm not making any excuses, but none of that looks good. And then you combine that with a little bit of a standoff attitude when most people used to blatantly, even Dana White had to come out and be like, look, I hit my wife, I'm so sorry, it shouldn't have happened, everything you say about me is right. Even people like that, Claressa was like, yeah, but, they were talking, the apology wasn't as clean when that occurred. You've got a cornerman running from the law, for a little bit of time and stuff like that. While all that guy, that will prevent you from getting to be a crossover person.
Right.
If the Wheaties people were having that discussion of putting Claressa on the Wheaties box, which, like I said, she was closer than just about anybody in this last generation, really. That discussion ended with that interaction.
Right.
It's unfortunate for her because I think that this would be a great time for a second chance kind of thing, if you want to call it that. Maybe she blew a chance already. So let's give her a second chance, because definitely as an athlete first, she does back it up.
She really does, and it's great. It's great to see. And you're right. I hope some of that other stuff. Hey, look, at 26, 27, 28 years old, I said a whole lot of inflammatory, dumb stuff that I didn't need to be saying myself. Okay, I'm not in the spotlight. I didn't have a camera on me back then. Everybody didn't have a camera in their pocket. I'm old, is what I'm saying, Miguel. I'm old. but
she did.
A little bit of wisdom comes with age.
She didn't really seem that
right. A mentor.
Allow yourself, I'm going to do things my way, or however you want to sum up her act. Like, she doesn't care. I'm going to speak my mind. All those things are positive things, but there are ways to bring it to light on a social media way that don't leave you looking bad, or that don't leave you defending yourself against, shots from nobody's really. But you put yourself in a situation where Claressa needs another chance at the top notch, at the top shot, and we'll see if she can make it. You know what I mean? But I do think she still has the potential to be a crossover type of athlete. The Olympic gold medals do not hurt, and hopefully some opponents turn up that make the rest of her career in boxing. Maybe she returns to MMA and does something there. But I do think that as just purely on the athletic side, that I wouldn't rule out that potential for her to make another huge run, because athletic the aces. It's the other baggage that comes around too, that you hope she's maturing a little bit, getting better handling, so that some of that gets mitigated. Because I think that if you hold that stuff against her, you may be short selling what could be a generational type of fighter on the women's end.
Right. And I want to be clear that I don't personally hold it against her, but as that publicist, you got to read the zeitgeist, and you got to know what the idiots are going to hold against people. You got to know what moderates are going to hold against people. You got to know what the general, because people across the spectrum buy Wheaties. Again, we're going back to Wheaties, but it's all the products. But those endorsement deals with the bigger companies, I've got endorsement deals. Little me, I've got endorsement deals, and it says in my contract that I've signed, we see you said something online we really don't like.
Yeah,
we're done. We're done. You know what I mean? And that's what those things come with, morality clauses and all that good stuff. So you're always beholden to that, and you can act like you're not beholden to anybody, and say whatever you want, and that's your freedom of choice to do that, and it's their freedom of choice to quit paying you money.
And we can wrap up with money, because on the women's end in boxing, there's still a lot to be done on the money end. We're talking about the cream of the crop, the elite girl. And aside from maybe Katie Taylor, who's got sponsored, Katie Taylor doesn't make a lot of money for her stardom, I don't think, especially when we consider what she's making for when she enters the ring. What are they paying her to fight? And it's probably elevated because she's a star, but it's probably not enough still. But she does okay because of sponsorships, because of other things like that. She's protected and kept her image. Claressa doesn't have quite that strong a benefit of side deals and things like that keep her on the elite. And the women, and that's another one of those things where, if you're going to pay these women $25,000 for world title fights, but expect them to act like, the upper echelon athletes that have publicists and have people, guiding
Right.
their stuff like that. You know, there's a disconnect.
It's a little unfair, right? There's a disconnect. It's unfair, right? It is unfair. So, you know, there are times, you know, on Twitter or whatnot, where I've made comments like, "I wish she would not say that," and it's because, you know, it's because I know she doesn't have that team, or doesn't feel like she has that team, and so I have her best interest because I have boxing best interests at heart. So that's something that you know that we try and concentrate on is we do love the sport. We do want to see it grow, and we want most everybody in the sport to do well. You know, that's part of growing the whole sport. So
yeah, you know, when she came out of the Olympics and turned pro, and now we're down the line. You know, she's 13-0, world champion, this, that, the other thing. She may have checked off every box, including be controversial, including, you know, get famous through controversy or whatever like that. The one box she hasn't checked off of is a major payday. So
is a Wheaties box. I had to do it. It's the one box she hasn't checked off is the Wheaties box.
I think the PFL attracted her with the chance at $1 million,
right?
Which is still capable of moving the needle because she's not getting that in boxing.
No.
And I think that's something that hopefully, you know, a payday manifests itself for her, and she's able to, you know, take it to the next level. Entourage, things like that. Another level of thinking. Look at your career. You know, becoming Claressa Shields Incorporated, kind of like that would be a beneficial move for someone with that type of star potential. Because right now, from when she came out of the Olympics to now, you have to say that she hasn't met that potential.
Yeah, I agree. And you're like you said, if you're not going to make it in the ring, you need to make it in endorsements. So there needs to be a broader picture. You know, boxing as a business. You know, prize fighting. That's the truest name for this sport ever, is prize fighting. But if you're not getting that prize in the ring, then the modern equivalent, or the modern component that goes with prize fighting, is your endorsements. Prize fighting and endorsements. And for women, endorsements might well, like you said, Katie Taylor probably makes more money off endorsements than she does in the ring by far.
That's the way it should be, in terms of, because the women that are stars are still not many. So she's a very nice commodity. You want a woman excelling at what is considered a men's sport and doing it at the absolute highest level with technique. Boom, you've got Katie Taylor there as an example. She carries herself that way, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not 100% sure that's the image, but you can work with that, and that is worth something. Claressa dropped the ball on that type of endorsement. And I'm not saying it's all her fault, but repairing that and getting back to that should be her number one thing, because at the end of the day, I think, you know, if she's going to make $50,000 for a boxing match, that'd be on the high end. I don't think she has. I may be wrong, but I don't think that's the case. I
wonder what she made with the Marshall, having headlined the Marshall, you know, her and Savannah Marshall. That is one we should check out to because that one might have paid well enough, considering that they had a pretty good ticket sales and viewership. If you combine it all together,
more than likely what she had is a contract with a fee for the fight. That fee is paid for. The WBC or whoever has the belts can put like a minimum. It's like they have to make X because it's a title fight, but that X is $25,000, and that's like level out of the demand from the WBC. So, yeah, it's like I said, Claressa needs to take that into account. That she has limited her paydays, and she had more potential for that type of payday where people decided that she was a crossover star. She had more potential than anybody on the men's side coming out of the Olympics. Maybe, you know, Shakur Stevenson now is probably eclipsed her, obviously, in terms of, you know, because boxing on the men's side is bigger, right? So coming out of those Olympics, Shakur Stevenson was in a pack, and Katie Taylor and Claressa Shields were almost like the biggest stars. You know, you had Brazilian guys, you had there was that Irish kid, I'm going to forget his name, but that Bob Arum signed half the Olympic guys.
Right.
So, yeah, Claressa needs to clean her image up a little bit to really start getting on those paydays. And hopefully, So that will be like a tide that continues to go for her, and she continues to rise.
It'll help, not just her, but as I say, it'll help the sport of boxing in general, and it'll help women's boxing. Imagine, ambassadors. Just think of the word ambassador. Her and Katie Taylor and Savannah Marshall and Alicia Baumgartner.
Look at the way Katie Taylor has conducted herself. And in a situation, and we talked about it a little bit there, because she has such a fervent following, and because the Irish have a thuggish quality to their boxing fans, and the idea of soccer hooligans and stuff
like a soccer fan, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But that's a lot more common there, and the Irish get very fervent.
Mm-hmm.
So there was worry about her fighting in Ireland again.
Right.
But Conor McGregor stepped up and said, "I'll sponsor the whole thing."
Yeah, he had to pay for the extra security and whatnot. That was part of the gig that Conor covered. Sure.
Why hasn't Floyd Mayweather or someone like that done that for Claressa Shields? Maybe it's because Clarissa's a little bit more standoffish. I'm not putting it all on Mayweather. Why hasn't a big sponsor stepped up to back her? A non-boxer. It doesn't have to be a competitor. In McGregor's case, it was, but McGregor's a businessman. You see what I mean? That's one of the essential differences.
Yeah.
Her sponsors worked to make the fight happen, and I think Claressa doesn't have a sponsor that people are still waiting to see with her, and that shouldn't be.
Yeah. So, hey, there's a lot there to unpack. I'm sure some folks watching this right now understand where we're coming from. I'm sure some are getting a little red under the collar, and maybe another perspective is that it's mainly society's fault for treating her differently or whatnot, for not letting her be her and still supporting her. But hey, listen, this is not us not supporting Claressa. This is us saying we think the key to get more endorsements is to be a little less controversial on Twitter and social media. It's just a simple equation.
Let's be honest, because from her perspective, I don't think she's saying anything wrong. She just needs a professional filter.
Honest.
That presentation at the top level that makes you available so that you're not turning some people off. Because, whether it's right or wrong, that's what's happened. So I think that's a good spot to wrap up.
That's it. So, hey, looking forward to her fight this weekend. I do expect the win from her. It would be great to see a knockout. We'll kind of be looking for that. And but at any rate, nice discussion on it, Miguel, and interesting how you've had some connection with these fighters that are all interwebbed there. Savannah Marshall, by the way, who Claressa just beat last October, is fighting Franchon Cruz in about 1 month, July 1st. So want to throw that out there. Franchon, her debut was against Claressa. It was both their debuts. A very nice debut.
Claressa Shields had a 64-1 amateur record. That loss is to Franchon.
And then they fought each other first in the pros.
Yeah.
And Franchon is 8-1. Has only lost her first fight. Again.
The women, the talent level and the boxing that you can see on the women's side is at a higher level in their compensation and the attention that they're getting.
That's right.
If you're not watching that stuff, if you're a real boxing head, you should be able to appreciate this is no longer, an era where you got maybe one woman with skill in the ring, or that people have been bringing along or whatever. It's a different era. These girls are here to compete. And Franchon and Claressa are a perfect example of that, bringing their rivalry from the amateurs into the pros. But
she had about 70 amateur fights as well. Yeah, it's going to be. I mean, it really is neat. And listen, sometimes when you're in a great era for something, you might not realize it. Some people weren't big on women's boxing 5 years ago. There weren't as many fights. But listen, I think the sport will grow but I think we're in a little miniature golden era right now with still Layla Ali attending some fights, still Christy attending some fights. These girls coming and having been through the Olympics, being the gold medal winners, and fighting each other. Your Katie Taylors, your Chantal Camerons, Claressa Shields, Alicia Baumgartners, Michaela Meyer, Savannah Marshall. I know I'm forgetting folks here. Carolyn Dubois. I love Carolyn Dubois. Amazing knockout power. We talk about women not always having that knock. Carolyn Dubois, I want to shout out to her. There's a lot of exciting fighters. I think this is this is like, my alert to folks. Don't wait till later and go, man, that was a really great era. Realize how great women's boxing is right here, right now, and start paying attention.
And if you follow boxing, like if you're a boxing person that analyzes technique and stuff as well, the women represent a golden opportunity where your knowledge could be ahead of the sport book thing.
That's right.
They still do not take this stuff that serious.
Right.
So if you were, like, for example, there's a major fight that they still don't have odds for here. They'll have an odds tomorrow, and somebody who might be on top of that may be able to find some value in that as well. So on the gambling end, the women, I think, present an opportunity, similar to what men's MMA did several years ago, where you could be ahead of the sport books and stuff if you were, in the ground floor process of going to fights or knowing people in camps and things. Women's boxing represents that opportunity now.
That's right. That's right. That's the great info, Miguel. I appreciate that. These shows have been great, and I really like that we got together this week to talk about this fight, even on a week when there's really not a lot of boxing going on. We're always thinking about the future. We're always thinking about what's going on and how it's going to affect things in the future. We've got some great fights coming this summer yet, and I hope we see Claressa Shields 2 more times this year. I think that we can. There's some building in women's that can happen. I'd like to see Katie Taylor fight again this year at some point. So
Claressa could be definitely at 28 ready to fast track herself a little bit. I think I wouldn't rule out returning to MMA to clean up that lost perception, and I still think with her athleticism and her background that she's got the makings of an elite MMA person as well. She took a little bump in the road. How you handle that, we'll see. But she takes her next steps this week, so we'll see.
That's right. Amanda Serrano. I can't forget Amanda Serrano on that list from earlier. I'm backtracking. Another great boxer right now.
Brockhouse, she's 41, but she may weather the division 10 years ago. So
that's right.
She's still out there and has some name recognition that somebody could try to grab by signing her up for a last go, getting that win, and hey, you'd be a Hall of Famer there. So definitely, we're blessed with a good era of women's boxing. A lot of women that want to carry the flag and feel they're carrying the flag for the sport. And it starts with their in-the-ring action. They're good. This is not foxy boxing.
No. This is great era for it. Hey, please do subscribe, tell your friends, all that good stuff, and check with us weekly. We do the Wage Rage at the beginning of the week, and we come back with Piatt picks towards the end of the week, where we get into the details of where to put that money for you. But we thank you, and thanks, Miguel, for joining me as co-host and producer. It's always a pleasure, man.
And on Sunday, you be on the lookout. If you can subscribe, they'll send you a message and stuff. But that's when the next Wage Rage hits. For next week, we're looking at Taylor and Lopez, right?
What a great fight coming up. A bit of a hard one to pick. Teofimo Lopez, Josh Taylor, of course, coming off of that Jack Catterall win, but very controversial. And Teo having his ups and downs as well. We'll get into that more. Divorce papers were just filed this week. Alert. Divorce papers were filed on Teofimo Lopez this week. I see trouble ahead. We'll get into it on Sunday.
Yeah, and just many different perspectives on that fight. This is the third of a series of extremely good lightweight fights.
That's right.
We'll take a look at the division and see how everything's shaking up as well. So join us Sunday.